Live from Kakariko Village. Broadcast throughout the Retroverse. Transmitted to the real world via a maze of wires connecting a Super Nintendo to a Wii, to a Wi-Fi network, and finally to the internet. The Techno Funk Boy presents the Retro Zoo Super Show. Now here are your hosts, Kai and Steven.
Hello and welcome to the Retro Zoo Super Show. I am one of your hosts, Paul.
Wait, are we doing this?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes,
man.
we're doing this.
Okay, I'm scared to say my real name. I'm Doug. I said it. And I have a stuffed up nose, so bear with me.
Goodness. So we are not in Kakariko Village at all, and actually in our individual homes for recording our 101st episode. I almost said 101th.
Yeah, that would have been okay by me. I actually like that. 101th.
101th. That'd be the name of the episode, is 101th.
This is the 101th episode.
Right. Oh, so how are you doing?
I'm good, man. I've been struggling with this allergies / cold thing for like 3 weeks, but I'm pretty good. Aside from that, I mean, it's not really been that big of a deal. Physically,
Yeah, allergies are terrible.
Yeah, but it's like the winter. I mean, I thought you were supposed to get allergies in the spring, but I guess there's like 2 times a year
Oh, yeah.
when you can get kind of allergies or something.
We live on a swamp.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. Is I think there's probably some kind of black mold or fungus that blossoms right before fall. It's like brought about by the song of the cicadas. It's like it's some kind of I don't know. There's some frequency that the cicadas hit with their song that, like, I don't know, tantalizes the flagellum on the fungus that release their spores and get in my nostrils and clog them up. So I blame the cicada song. I like to blame something.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
The more extravagant, the blaming is, the better. So.
And now the audience knows that you and Steven are exactly alike.
There was actually no characterization going on there whatsoever. As much as I pretended, like, I'm just dumbing down my character to be Steven. No, I'm actually that dumb.
Oh, goodness. So, yeah, we decided to do this kind of late. And I think it was just actually the other day because I thought it might be fun. All of a sudden, because we were going to jump right into Final Fantasy IV, and but we just finished up our 100th episode,
which is a pretty big milestone.
It was a big milestone in the podcast as well, because we've actually been developing this kind of sub story arc, since pretty much nearly the beginning.
Yes,
and it all kind of came to fruition.
Yeah, dude. I've said before, privately between us or maybe in other places, I've said that I think that was one of my favorite things about the podcast, which is funny because it was one of the things I was most reticent about initially when you were like, you pitched the idea to me about this podcast and you described the characters and what's going on, and I was kind of like, yeah, I don't know, man, like, it sounds kind of like goofy or wonky or something. But then when we started, like, I just took on the character that you made for me, You know, you gave me a lot of freedom to be the character, and you know, we never had written scripts. I mean, the most we ever had was probably in the 100th episode where we actually had an outline. But prior to that, like
we have had written scripts, like when we did Zelda 2,
yes,
and when we did the Dragon Warrior. When we do
Specials,
like full dramatizations, we often have a script. That's a lot of that is because like those episodes are like recorded, like when I can get people in front of a microphone,
right? But those weren't plot line stories.
No,
those were like
weren't.
asides.
Yeah, those were
those
just
were
dramas.
like specials. So that didn't actually concern Kai and Steven's plot, you know, like the whole moving forward. I guess that's what I'm talking about. But no, those were really excellent, and I enjoyed being part of those. And so that's actually been probably the most fun that I've had with, you know, I mean, this whole experience of being on this podcast has been just like, it started out as I was like, oh no, like what have I got myself into? Like I'm scared, like I don't know if I have the time for this. And then it's like one of the things I look forward to more than anything else, you know, my week or month. Yeah, and I appreciate it. But part of that is because we get all the flavors, you know, we get to do, you know, these scripted things that you've written out before, and they're always excellent and fun, but then we also get to do a lot of like improv, kind of like real loose, like I don't know, man, like storyline between our characters, and it's been so much fun. I was kind of sad, you know, that we finally culminated in episode 100, you know, and it kind of like it seemed like the end, and I know it's not. I mean, I know we can take these characters further and we can do more with them, but it was really a good story arc. So my question to you is, and I've asked you before, but I'm now going to ask you in front of everybody, like, is there any way we can condense the story down to like I'd like to retell this story almost, or like I wish there was a way. I don't know, it's probably really difficult, but like,
yeah, I was like, I'm toying with some stuff to do with the 100 episodes, but it's just that's a lot of episodes. There's a lot of material in there.
Yeah, well, we might mention something about like the plot in like an episode for like all of 30 seconds or a minute, it furthers the plot.
Right? Yeah, and exactly.
But then that's it. That's all there is, you know.
Right. So yeah, we're gonna do this like just kind of a behind the scenes episode of why this thing is the way it is.
Yeah.
And go from there. And so I'll kind of tackle the pre-Doug stuff, history of it.
Okay.
And this was actually before we met. I was really getting into the Gorillaz, the band.
Okay, yeah.
And at the same time, I had already produced the Final Fantasy mixes. Now at the time, it was just this release for my friends, just for fun. But I put a lot of work into it, and I ended up really loving it. And it was one of those things that just in the back of my mind, I was like, I really wanted to get back to, but I didn't want to do like game music under my normal name, because, you know, I do some like rock and roll stuff, and it's like, you know, that's a big shift in genre, you know, for people.
Yeah.
And so I kind of wanted to do rock and roll under one name, and like game music and new wave stuff under this techno funk boy thing. And so I thought of like, you know, it's like, well, why don't we do, you know, since we're doing game music, it could kind of be like a Gorillaz type of thing where it'd be like a fake band, but because it's game music, you know, instead of like cartoons, they could be, computer game, video game characters. And so I started working on some music, doing that, and my plan was kind of like the Gorillaz to advance the entire plot through the what am I thinking of? Oh, through like albums, you know, like having like some story in the album liner notes, but also through websites and stuff. And I just instead I decided that I wanted to do a podcast, and I was really starting to get excited about some of the kind of the ideas, you know, to do a podcast. But my work at the time was really starting to like scrutinize my social media. I mean, completely inappropriately, but who are you going to complain to? And unfortunately, it's one of those situations. It's like you can put in a complaint, but they're still going to do it, and then they just get mad that you put in a complaint. And so I was like, well, it might be better to do it under a fake name. And I was like, wait a minute, the Techno Funk Boy could host this. And then that's when I came to you, because we've been friends for a while now by this point, and we always crack ourselves up when we talk.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, yeah, I mean, Doug needs to be in on this. And you, I think, thought I was crazy. You're like, oh, I don't really play NES. And I'm like, don't worry about it. It's going to be fun. We're gonna pretend to be computer characters, and then we're gonna have like fake phone calls like Phil Hendry does. And you're like, okay, who's Phil Hendry? Oh, it's this radio guy. He's really great. He does all these fake phone calls, and they're hilarious. You're like, yeah, this sounds dumb, man. And
I was nervous, dude. At first, I was like, oh, I don't know. Well, I think it was the biggest thing that scared me was like, dude, I'm not a retro video game player. I didn't have the privilege of having any console until I was like in college years.
Yeah.
And I didn't even like, pretty much that was the original Xbox I got as a gift. And the only game I ever really got into on the Xbox was Halo, and I played the crap out of Halo. I mean, I played it all the time, and then it was a first person shooter, which is not very console-esque, and then, but I was a PC gamer before that, and then I had the Xbox for a few years, man, and I might have played it, I might have played it a lot for about two of those, a couple of years. Right. But then it was like, after that, I just went back to PC. I was just like, this is what I'm a PC master race, the inflammatory PC master race. Like, oh, I know it hurts everybody's, sensibilities, but yeah, I felt that way, I mean, and actually I didn't feel that way, because it's like Canadians asking Americans, like, what do y'all think of Canada? It's like, we don't think of you guys. Sorry. We don't think about you guys. Like, y'all are our hat. It's kind of right. like as a PC gamer, you don't really think about, what are the consoles doing? Like, I don't know. It's just like, because, I mean, maybe it's different now, but when I was playing a lot of PC, the consoles weren't, Xbox and PlayStation were kind of just getting to the place where they can compete with the PC, and in terms of graphics and quality of games, but yeah, I just never played consoles. And so when you pitch this idea about like retro video games, I mean, I had played a few retro, and it comes out of the show, I think we discussed it sometimes, like, I've played a few retro video games. Like, I had friends that had Super Nintendos, and I mean, I've played the Atari. I had a friend that had an Atari, and I had a friend that had an original Nintendo. I mean, I've played all of the major Sega, I've played all the consoles, but like mostly at a friend's house over their shoulder, or playing for a couple minutes on my own. Like, right. Never invested time, or never thought about like followed games like you did. You have like more of this, like, you remind me of like a librarian or archivalist, in terms of when it comes to like retro video games. Like, you were there, you saw it happen, like, you filed these games away in your mind, and like,
you're so like, old, you remember like crazy.
You remember well, no, I didn't have access to it. That's the funny thing. You mentioned like being sheltered, or I think we've talked about that, like, you weren't allowed to play certain things and stuff as a youth, but like, dude, I was ultra sheltered. Like, I think it was weird though, because I think we were sheltered on different kinds of things, because my parents said we didn't have a TV in our house, like, growing up. I mean, we had a TV, but it was like, it was one of the old ones that you turn the dial on it, and every other dial was fuzz, and we only had Fox, Fox 29 or whatever, like the local Fox station, and I watched Next Generation, Star Trek: The Next Generation,
right? Yeah,
and like PBS, and then like Saturday morning cartoons, on Fox. That's all we had until I was like, left the house. I was like 18 years old. I mean, I didn't. And it was funny because whenever I go to somebody's house that had cable, I was like a zombie. Like, I couldn't. Like, I would watch the ads. Like, everything was fascinating. Like, television was like, it was like so taboo in my house. So like, I never had TV. We never had consoles. I'm like, well, we did have the computer for some reason, and so we had the internet when it came out. And I was there when the internet, like, blossomed. I mean, I remember having a modem, and I remember upgrading from whatever low quality modem we had. I remember going to the 14.4K modem, and then going from the 14.4 to the 28.8 modem, and then going from the 28.8 to the 56K.
Oh yeah.
And we went from 56K. I think we went to DSL.
Yeah.
Like,
okay, so this is completely off topic.
Like, I remember getting on because I was playing StarCraft at that point, and I remember thinking, like, telling all my little buddies, I've got TSL. What do you have? Like, kind of like what do you run? Blah 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 blah. And, like, you could, and that was the thing about StarCraft is by everybody's name when you joined a game, like they'd have like bars for your latency. And so, like, if you had red, 5 red bars, like, you're lagging. And if you had, like, I think when you got to 3, it became yellow. Or 4, you had yellow. And then, like, 3 was, like, starting to become green. And, like, 2 was green. And, like, 1 was, like, the fastest, I remember I had, like, I always had, like, 1 or 2 green bars by my name. And I always thought I was, like, man, I'm so awesome. So it was yeah, dude, it was weird. And, like, man. You remember that? I mean,
oh yeah, it's like, and I wasn't in StarCraft, but like when I got a 56K modem pretty soon. When people are still buying the 28.8s.
Yeah,
and so like my friends were like super jealous of it. And
I got a 56K modem. It's
wow.
Yeah, it's so funny, dude.
And we play the Realm online, and I was like, yeah, I'm moving faster than everybody.
I'm done downloading, dude.
Yeah, the lag on that game was still ridiculous, and but yeah, it was so much fun. But this is like, so this is completely off topic, but I was listening to an Actual Play podcast today. Uh-huh. And it was recorded, more recently, but it was set back in 2008. And these people were like, it's like, oh, do they have internet in this hotel? Is it dial up? I see an AOL disc, and I'm like, what do you think 2008 was like? You were alive then, you clearly were alive. Do you not remember that, dial up went out like 10 years before that?
Yeah. No, it's weird. It's weird to think about that because, I mean, I think back to, milestones in my life and like what was the internet doing at those milestones, and obviously like when I was living at my parents' house, I mean, I lived with my parents until I was like 23 or 20, and then I got married. I moved out and got married. Like I mean, that's why I moved out, is because I got married. Like I lived with my parents until I got married, and I actually recommend that for every young person. Like, I talk to young people sometimes, like, oh yeah, I want to get out from my parents' room. I'm like, dude, stay there as long as you can. It's free rent. Like, you don't understand. Like, it's free rent. Like, don't be so eager to go away. It's probably just the parent in me, like, thinking about my kids one day leaving them. That's what I'm going to tell them. I'm like, dude, you're not going to get free rent anywhere else. But no, I it's weird. So I think of milestones, and I remember in college, it was an awkward time in college. I remember one of my professors telling us I was taking I was taking a class in medieval literature. It was like a Chaucer class, and I remember the professor. She was a sweet, sweet lady. Actually, my best friend's mom, and because we live in a small town, so like you knew everybody. But she was like, she's like, okay, today, there's a thing called Wikipedia. I had never heard of it. I was like, what are you talking about, crazy lady? She's like, Wikipedia, and like I want us all to contribute to the Wikipedia page on Chaucer, and like that was our assignment. Was like to go to the Wikipedia page and add to the Chaucer page, and I had no idea what she was talking about. I didn't do it. I think I don't know why, I'd sold her something, but like I couldn't figure it out, or couldn't figure out the internet or something. But like it was like that early, so but that was my college years. But at that time, I think I definitely had DSL. Definitely was probably playing. I didn't have cable. Cable was what everybody wanted. Like, okay, cable was the fastest you could go, and I think it kind of still is today. Maybe it's fiber or something now, but I think pretty much. But we didn't have really games that pushed. I didn't play games that pushed the limit of internet
Right.
connectivity. I think StarCraft didn't require too much, and that's pretty much what I played. But anyway, no, it's just a fascinating time, man. It was a fascinating time to grow up, and it was kind of weird because you just took it for granted, even though it was like brand new technology, and not only just brand new technology, but brand new technology that changed the entire world and continues to change the entire world. And
Yeah.
it's like the weirdest thing, dude. Like we grew up. I mean, you're a little ahead of me, so you saw it even more. But like,
Wow. You just
you know,
calling me straight up old.
I said a little ahead of me, so like you're a little bit older than me. I don't think you're that much older than me. I think sometimes in my mind I think you are much older than me, but that's probably because like it's that kid mentality that you have. Like remember when you're kids and like somebody's 13 and you're only 10, and you're like, oh, they're so old, like they're so experienced, like because they're like 2 years older than you.
Right.
But I actually don't think I know how old you are. That's fine. But but no, it was a fascinating time to grow up, and it was a fascinating time to see the internet. And so I guess in that sense, the whole idea of the Retro Zoo Super Show was attractive because it was like I feel like I grew up with a lot of retro games, and we've talked about it before. I played, Sierra games. I played as a little kid. I played
Yeah.
Space Quest and stuff like that, King's Quest and things like that. But we even had an episode early on, I think, where we discussed like the difference between retro games. And it's funny because now I think back on some of the more recent episodes and our topics and stuff where we talk about retro games and we're talking about PC games, where initially like you wanted to say retro games were, pretty much cartridge games, and didn't really want to refer to like StarCraft as being a retro game. And when in fact I think StarCraft 1 is pretty retro.
Oh, I think so.
98.
And okay, so this gets a little
This may be
a little
Kai
weird,
talking.
but my opinion and Kai's opinion are not the same.
But see, I can't tell that because like Steven's opinion and Doug's opinion are pretty much the same. So like sometimes I think,
Yeah.
and actually I do know that I'm not a total dunderhead. Like I do know that sometimes like I'm talking to Kai, or like this is Kai's like egging me on, like all the StarCraft. I'm like, all right, it's Kai, But although secretly I think it is you too. But
No, I like. I mean, I like watching StarCraft.
well,
I don't understand it. I need to understand it better.
Well, you've been playing Heroes of the Storm, and like, we've been playing it, and like you're getting good at it. And I think that like those skills, the Heroes of the Storm skills, are micro skills to StarCraft. Like so, basically, you're learning the micro skills to StarCraft, which is really important because they're both Blizzard games. It's pretty much exactly the same. So your combat skills, like the difference is like you just have to learn another set of skills, which is macro, like actually like working your base and all your working the economy to get to a place where you can have time to spend doing the micro skills, which is what you're doing in Heroes of the Storm. And I'm actually suck horribly at macro skills in StarCraft. So like I'm pretty much playing Heroes of the Storm when I play StarCraft. Like I usually try to leverage the game to put it. That's why I do so many rushes. I play Zerg and I do Zerg rushes. Which is like so stereotypical, like newbie StarCraft playing. But it's you just leverage the game to where like you're focused mostly on micro. And so then it becomes like almost like a Heroes of the Storm game because you're or a MOBA. You're just playing your units. You're not really focusing as much. Like you have a set pattern for your economy, for your macro play, and so that gives you time to like really focus on your micro.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I digress. But no, it's been fun, man. It's the show is a hoot, and like I said, like initially I was like, oh, I don't know, like I'm not a retro gamer, but then like you were like, no, that's great. Actually, it's great for you not to be a retro gamer. Like. And you were right.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think it works out really nicely. I wanted to kind of go over because we had this plot laid out fairly early, but it wasn't at episode 1, and there were a few things that happened that caused us to kind of go down the direction we went. One of them was like when we first started. You live 3 miles away from me.
Yeah.
And so like we would just, even after work, just for an hour, like you'd come over and we would chill and record. And
That was awesome.
yeah, it was really cool. And like almost immediately, like within a couple of months, you moved like 5 gazillion miles away.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're in the same metro area, but I'm 40 minutes away now by car on tollways.
Right. Yeah. And since, your job, without kind of going into what it is, has you work late at night?
Yeah.
And also increased work hours at Christmas time.
Right.
Whereas like, you coming 3 miles down the street after work was not a big deal. You driving 40 minutes down the street after work is a big deal. And
Yeah,
so we started
things.
having to, like record online, but even more impactful was, at Christmas, you just couldn't get away.
Yeah, it's harder.
Yeah. That's not your fault or anything. That's not a complaint. We both have families, in the show, Steven is single and Kai just got married. It's literally last episode, but
In real life, we
What's
both
that?
have. It's in real life. We both have kids and
right. Yeah.
spouses.
And if you ever do want to hear my wife, she does play Anla in the show. So the few episodes Anla's actually showed up for, that's her. But yeah, we have a lot going on, and I'm kind of glad we didn't know you were moving at the beginning, because I don't think I would have asked you if I knew that. I think, part of it was you're so close that we could on a whim get together and do this. But it still works out. But one of the really, really early things that happened was Christmas happened. You really couldn't get away. And so we turned it into this whole thing that, Steven had to get a second job for Christmas. And, and then it then kind of disappeared. And that's when, we were having active conversations about, what if that's not Steven who's coming back?
Yeah.
And I had already wanted it to be Dr. Wiley. Then you came up with the idea of Murd, since Dr. Wiley builds robots, this would be a good idea. And so by the time Murd shows up, we had the plot pretty well in hand. We like by episode maybe 16, we knew what episode 100 would be.
Yeah.
There were some additions like the Sahuagin. Which is my favorite running joke, because that was just an honest mispronunciation.
Yeah, well, it turned into like a really great little bit. It was like it's one of my favorite bits, I think, on the show. It's like, just how like offended they were, and it kind of and honestly, it kind of encompasses the age we live in. Hypersensitivity, and then. That we're just treating with such a reverence, and like they get like more flabbergasted and angry, and it just kind of blows up, and like it's just like it was my favorite bit, I think.
Oh yeah, well, and it's always
a little bit of a social critique, I guess.
Yeah, well, and it's always interesting, like a lot of like the fake phone calls I'll record by myself, just to make it so that because we usually jump on our recordings pretty late at night. And so, I kind of want to make the most of your time. And so if I can like record as much as possible beforehand, I do.
Yeah. You're really good about that. I appreciate that, actually.
Oh, no problem. Yeah. But when we're doing a fake phone call with you in the room, or in the room figuratively, online, it's always really entertaining, because I do not know where you're going to go with stuff. Most of the time.
Really mean. I don't know. I'm not that mean of a person, but like Steven is mean.
Oh yeah. Well,
like
Steven, Dr. Wiley as Steven is really mean. And when, because we did not plan on you just outright like verbally assaulting the Sahuagin. It was just going to kind of be like this funny thing where, they called and were just offended by what we had said. But you just flat out was like, no, y'all are crazy cultists and you kill people. And that kind, just the spur of the moment thing. I mean, so much of that kind of stuff is off the, like you said earlier, we don't script episodes unless they are actual dramas where we have multiple people contributing.
Right. If there's more than me and you, it is always scripted.
Right. Yeah.
You playing different voices and stuff. It's usually, and it's funny because I actually, and I was telling you, I've been listening to some other podcasts. I've been cheating on Punk Boy because it doesn't come out every week. But I listened to some other podcasts, and I was listening to a podcast today, and it was an interview with Tina Fey, who's a writer at Saturday Night Live, actress there or whatever. And I was like listening to her talk about basically like listening to her and the host, I think it was Conan, and they were talking about the difference between improv and then like structured improv, and like basically like kind of like it was weird because like they were talking about the different kinds of forms for improv. And we fall into some of the categories like they were talking about. I was thinking about, it was interesting because I was listening to what they were saying. I was like, this is fascinating because they're really like what they're talking about. You and I have done there's different schools of improv, and like there's the totally free form improv where like you don't know anything, like you just kind of go out and just start talking, and like those are kind of not necessarily frowned upon, but like that's kind of not in anymore. But like a lot of more of the improv that I think that you see, especially Saturday Night Live and stuff like that, or when it happens in comedy films, usually it's like there's a structure. And like what we're doing, like what you'll present to me, like here's the structure, here's the form. Yeah. Like we improv inside of that, right? And it's like it makes it really fun and cool because it's strange and new to both of us. Like it's like here's the scenario. It's like role playing. I mean, I think it's like improv. It sounds a little too fancy because we also are role players at heart. I think we like to role play, and it's like, man, in a good role play scenario, like you're just saying what your character would say. Like it's not forced. I'm not trying to be clever or funny. It's just like this is what I feel like my character how he would respond in this situation. Yeah. So it was really a fun thing about the show is kind of like these structured little role playing or improv scenarios where we just kind of get to wing it based on like what's happening around us.
Yeah. Oh, and some of that's like the funniest stuff. Like in last episode. I mean, your speech about creating the rings out of your fingernail clippings. It's like I was trying to keep my mouth away from the microphone because I was cracking up so much. And
I don't know where that came from either.
Yeah, that was completely out of the blue. That was not in the outline. Like our outline for that episode was like 12 lines long. It was just, okay, we got to hit these points to get the plot moving. Yeah. And then we ended up with like 45 minutes of just nonsense. It was great.
So much fun. It was so much fun. I mean, I wish we could do that every day. And I know that in a way though, it is a lot of work because not only do we have to kind of there has to be a story already happening that we can build on. So that's the work, and that can be done over the course of a season, which would be fun to get into another one of those kind of like cycles. But then at the same time, like that's a lot of editing for you. I mean, it's just like it's a lot of work to do those kind of episodes, I'm sure. But I mean, I say that, but really, you honestly, dear listener, Paul makes my life easy. Like I feel like I just come in and say what like Paul tells me this idea, but he does all the editing and all the all the hard parts that like probably to make it sound good and flow better. Because I know there's a lot of stuff, we say a bunch of crap, and like sometimes you got to chop some of it off because it doesn't sound right or it's not in that.
It's going to get us in trouble.
It's going to get us in trouble, or I'll call you, and be like, "Hey man, I said this one thing. Could you not like post that? Like, can you cut that out?"
Oh, well, my favorite ones, and I got to teach you how to just like restate a line.
Yeah,
when you mess it up, because I could just edit that out. Because when you go, so yeah, Paul, I mean, Kai, it's like, I can't edit that. I can't edit it. You have to stop and then say, so Kai, like you're just starting over.
I just like
So
running in. It's like a run-on sentence.
yeah, so like a couple of those I've left in just because it's like there's no way I'm going to edit it, and no one actually believes that we're Steven and Kai anyways. If you did believe that, I'm sorry to burst your bubble.
Yeah.
Oh man. So yeah, I guess early on, one of my concerns was like I had written Steven originally, like Steven is retired military, and
Yeah.
like in the earliest bios of the band, like Steven was like super professional and focused, and I mean I'm not going to say whether you're professional or not, but you're not focused.
I don't think I'm very professional either, dude. I mean, I have the ability to become professional in a situation. I
Yeah.
feel like I can turn it on, if it's necessary. But I think I don't lean towards professionalism, and I definitely am not organized ever. But
Yeah.
but it's kind of funny because Kai, the character Kai, is very organized and very fastidious, and kind of like picky and a little OCD, and it's kind of it's a fun contrast to have this kind of like
Right.
I imagine like this kind of pasty fumbling but like fastidious elf, contrasted with this brawny, unfocused, like messy drunk kind of
Yeah.
ex-military guy. It's just a funny combination. It's I
It
think it
has
actually
it.
works, has good chemistry.
Yeah. It has been fun. Just playing Kai when he's just annoyed and upset about everything. Like when like a Timmy calls, or like when Steven starts messing with Drum, like reprogramming him,
Yeah.
and I just come in and it's like, what? Why?
What?
No.
What are you doing? Yeah. I have to tell you, one of my favorite Kai and Steven interactions in the entire series didn't involve me. It was what you wrote. I think it was the Christmas special last year. That was such a good story, and that's what I love about the show too, man. And like,
Oh, the
I mean,
story like when Drum wandered off.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
that was
dude,
a fun. That was a
that
fun
was an awesome
thing.
story. But it was like a really cool interaction between. It actually made me feel proud to be Steven. I'm like, oh man, Steven's kind of a bad A in this story, but like but it was a good story too. Like, and I think that's one of the things I love about this show is I mean, I feel like we're totally like we're doing like the golden years. Like this episode right now that everybody's listening to or not listening to is like we're going back and like remember that time, but like we haven't been doing it for that long, but we've been doing it long enough to where I can look back on the show as a whole, and it's really cool because, and it's one of the reasons I really like the show, and I think over time I like it more and more, and I think I'd like anybody that's listening to this episode that hasn't listened to the entire catalog, I think would really benefit from it because, I mean, of course, I have a personal investment in that. I played, one of the hosts through the series, through many of the episodes, so I have this personal, attachment. But I think the story, it's so fun and cool because like it's not linear, it's not like this, oh, we do the same thing every time, or like we found out that,
Right.
after a certain amount of episodes we decided this one little gag didn't work, which we did. There were certain things we did at the very beginning that you kind of just stopped doing, or we decided to stop doing. I think like collars kind of dropped off for a long time, but for the most part, we've got this. There's the kind of the baseline podcast, and it's like, and this is a really good summary, I think, or a good place to take a little summary of like what the podcast is. Basically, it's like Kai and Steven, or just Kai a lot of times because Steven's, I'm not there because I'm doing something else. But a lot of times it's like we're talking about a video game or like a soundtrack or something, pretty in depth about it. You talk about it for the length of a podcast, which is about an hour and a half or an hour 20 minutes or whatever hour, and then it's like you talk about it, you listen to some music, you got some fake advertising that you make, which is awesome. I love all advertising; it's always great. And then that's like the generic episode. But then it's like, but then there's these other episodes that are like weird episodes, like where there's like a heavy plot line, like there's a backstory going on between Kai and Steven and their whole little universe. That might be an episode. Every 10 or 20 episodes, you'll get one of those episodes. And then, like, you've got these other episodes that pop up, which are like specials. Like, it's like a dramatization, like a two-parter, like the Dragon Quest thing. Or the Christmas special, it's like a story. It's like, man, there's just like all this versatility and there's all this kind of new, different stuff. It's like you're experimenting. I feel like the Retro Zoo Super Show, and I really think this, dude. Like, honestly, and I'm being like, I don't think I've ever told you this. I've been hinting around it, but I feel like this has been like ground zero platform for creativity for me in my adult life. Like, I think I've wanted to be more creative. I've wanted to do more acting, writing kind of stuff, and I haven't really, this hasn't really maybe picked all those bones for me, but it's like definitely given me an outlet to be creative in a time when I was definitely in a dry spell. Like, I've always I've played music since I was young. I've done art since I was young, but as an adult it's really tapered off, and you kind of brought it back to me, and I think for that, like, I'm forever in your debt. But it's also, I feel like it's like a scratch pad. There's a theme, but it's like a notepad. Like, what can we do now? Like, what could So I wonder. I think I'd like to think that Techno Funk Boy will always be there in terms of, like, at least a starting place. This is like kind of how we started. We flexed our creative muscle. You flexed your writing, abilities in here. You flexed your music making. I mean, the show's theme, it was one of those themes, like even the theme music to the show was like, when I first heard it, I was like, okay, that's pretty good. That's cool. It's catchy. But like now, dude, like when I hear your show's theme, like when I hear the theme to the Techno Funk Boy, like when I listen to it every time, I don't skip it. Like, I actually like it. I really like it. And like,
oh yeah, I think
it gets me jazzed. It gets me ready for the show, but it's like, I just think it's great. And it's really, it's these little different avenues of creativity that all the Techno Funk Boys is just like, you've used it as it's been able to create so many different avenues of creativity. And I really hope that it continues, or in some form, like this is a springboard to like even more. Like maybe one day we'll break out of the Techno Funk Boy. We'll start doing other stuff that's, where we're using our creative abilities to make new shows or different shows or adding on to this show. I don't know. I don't know what the future will hold, but I definitely feel more connected, or I feel like there's more possibilities, because of the opportunities that have been provided in the technoverse.
yeah. It's like, I mean, and it's kind of been the same way with me. It's like I've been a musician all my life, and I've written a lot of music back in like my high school and college days and soon thereafter. But I haven't done a lot with music for a long time. And in the last 2 years has been the most productive musically since college. When I was taking 3 classes and really just playing guitar all day. And
well, I've seen that change even from knowing you, like from the music you were playing when we first met and what your abilities were when we first met versus like more recently. I'm like, holy cow, this guy's like really prolific and he's doing some really good stuff. Like, so yeah, it's you've been spending a lot more time doing it. It's an outlet, right? I mean, it's an outlet for you.
Yeah. And it's been an absolute blast. And, I've been having just a lot of fun doing it, and I mean, I'm way behind on the Mega Man stuff now, and because Dyson Dreary just sidelined me, and we ended up doing so much music for that podcast. It kind of pushed Mega Man aside, but at the same time, it's like there's it's like I just look back at like all the songs I've uploaded to Patreon in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And it really has averaged out to about 1 complete song a month. Perhaps even a little bit more when you consider, 14 songs from Dyson Dreary, and then 3 songs from Dragon Warrior, and then there's been 3 Mega Man songs, and then there's been some other stuff. And I'm just looking back on it, it's like, I've never been able to, I mean, not since I was single and didn't have a job and not many responsibilities was I able to do this much music. And I've had so much fun doing it.
Yeah, well, I think it's like having that platform, you know. I mean, it started with Techno Funk Boy, but then it was like Dyson Jury. It's like you had a reason to make it, you know. And like like I was telling you recently on the phone, like we were talking or something, or we were texting, and it was like, you got to a new stage in Dyson Jury, and the soundtrack changed, to fit the new atmosphere, the new place where y'all were. And I was like, that is so flippin' awesome. Like, and it sounds so good and it fits, and like it just adds so much to that podcast. I mean, we've talked before about, I've struggled with getting into real play podcasting, like listening to other podcasts other than Dyson Jury. So like I listen to Dyson Jury religiously, but then I try to get into other ones, and it's like and I think part of it's probably the music. I mean, I'm sure some of it's the characters I can't get into, but I love like listening to you and Rave or Sprocket in the game. Mm-hmm. You guys are just great characters. It's such a joy to listen to. And now we've got Esmeralda or Blue Velvet. She's awesome too. Like Jeff is, I feel like everybody is just totally on point. It's just such a good, well produced show. But the music, I can't find, who else is doing their own music for their Real Play podcast? I don't think anybody. I mean, I've only listened to a few other ones or tried to start listening. So, I can't really say that with authority, but
there are some. I don't know of any that are doing it to the extent we are.
But you're you're the player that's making the music. Like, it's an investment for you. Like, you are invested in this game. Like, you not only are you just listening to the game, or not even that you're just even the DM in the game, which would be also different. It's like you're the player, so like you're actually the one experiencing the world,
right?
And so you're also the one creating the music, from the player's perspective. And I really feel like on this last episode, when the music really changed a lot, just totally different atmosphere. You went from one type of terrain to another type of terrain to another kind of leg of your journey, and it just like the music would fit perfect. And I was like, this is freaking awesome. I was so sad when the episode was over because the music was over. It was like it's all over now. Like, wait 2 weeks, like for whatever reason Jeff can't put them out every week. I probably say, why can't he put them out every other day? He did put them out every week.
It's only hours upon hours of both music editing and just audio editing. But
I'm the
in general.
consumer, right? I mean, like, you have to feed me. So.
Oh man, well, for listeners out there who do want to just listen to the Dyson Jury stuff over and over again, the first volume is out.
Yes.
But yeah, so let me think. There was one other thing I kind of wanted to dig into. I was going to mention about the callers. It's like I originally planned on like two calls an episode. And it was just way too much. And then we ended up having like a lot more to say in certain episodes. And so it was just like, we were just running out of time and didn't want to stick a caller in. But just in general, stuff you can expect going forward. I realized that it's like, I put aside like a lot of like really, really big games because I didn't want to just like burn through all the really huge, important games like Mario 3 and stuff like that, like right away. And then spend like, once we hit episode 100, we're just talking about Ice Climbers for 5 episodes.
A 5-part series on Ice Climbers.
Right. But then it occurred to me, it's like, well, I mean, we did 100 eepisodes, and what major, like really groundbreaking, important games have we covered? And there weren't many. It's like we did that big series on Dragon Warrior and then Zelda 2. But that's not like that's like even the least of the Zelda games. And so we're going to shift and hit some super big titles. But I feel like one of the things we do well is is when we do like larger series of episodes, getting in deep about certain aspects of the games that other podcasts kind of gloss over. And another thing we do really well is music. And so I want to focus on that stuff more going forward. And I also really love the callers. And so I want to get back to more of that as well. And if we're spending more than one episode on a game, then we should have time to take a call or two as well.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the goal moving forward.
And the callers that you've had in the past, they're excellent. And I almost feel like, they kind of became part of the show, they did. They were at your wedding in the show, or Kai's wedding.
Well, especially Timmy and Rangel. It's like I really fell in love with those two characters. And Timmy, this is another way that I'm different from Kai, is no one on earth annoys Kai as much as Timmy does. Like right away, he has such a visceral reaction to Timmy's presence that it's hilarious to me. But me as Paul, Timmy's my favorite character on the show.
Yeah, I can tell. Yeah, I know.
And he's great. And I quite by accident, and I think it was just there were a couple of times that I was just like, I thought that we would be able to record and then we weren't able to, and I had to like piece together an episode like in just the last minute.
Yeah.
And I think at one point, just by accident, that I put Timmy and Rangel in the same room together.
Yeah, I think I remember that episode.
I loved it. I loved it.
What was that episode? I'm trying to remember.
I think it might have been like 49, like the when they were just doing the history of the show, like some clips from past episodes. That might have been the first time.
Oh, it was a good one. I remember them like arguing or like.
Gosh,
that was a fun one.
And in an episode, what was it, 99? I had the callback to actually the very first thing that was recorded for the show was the very first thing that I recorded for the show was the call about the Konami code in episode 3. That was recorded. We recorded episode 3 first, but that call, and I think I played it for you, and I think that's when you finally started seeing the vision of the show, because it's a hysterical call. First. And just being able to like recall that in episode 99, but now Rangel is there and arguing about the Konami code as well. And like everybody's getting it wrong. I loved that part. And it was so cool to be able to just have those characters, be there and just, bickering about that. I think is a lot of fun, and it's not something I really expected. Back then, I mentioned Phil Hendry, earlier. And if y'all as the audience have not heard Phil Hendry's show, I started hearing it when I was delivering pizzas in college, and it is absolutely hysterical. And I learned how to do like those fake calls from him where, he's arguing with himself and interrupting himself, and he's so much better at it than I'll ever be. But
you've gotten pretty good at it, dude.
I'm getting better, but, and I'll like watch his videos on how he's doing stuff so that I can do it. But, he's an absolute genius, and that's totally where I got that idea. And, so that's been a lot of fun. But yeah, that's kind of where I see this thing going, is like, we're going to jump on Final Fantasy IV next, which is, not only a fan favorite, but it's I go back and forth on what my actual favorite game is, but Final Fantasy IV is up there, and it's a game I've played many, many times, and I absolutely love it. And so we're going to do a series on that, and we'll hit up some other games and game music, and that's going to be upcoming here soon. The last thing I want to address, unless there's anything about callers or anything like that you wanted to hit on.
No, I think we've covered it. I mean, I like the callers. I looking forward to bringing them back. So yeah. I'm with you on that.
Yeah. So there's an aspect of this that I've got to I've got to address. And it's because, and I've got to address it more because I've done such a very poor job of addressing it in the past, is I know, because I see the numbers, I know we have a very, very loyal and energetic base out there. But I would like y'all to help us out. And, I don't ask nearly enough for you to go rate and review us on Apple Podcast or whatever service you use. I don't bring up enough that, you know, we've got the music out, and it's on iTunes. It's everywhere. It's on Spotify. It helps us out a lot if you check that stuff out. Patreon is the same way. We're having a lot of benefits going out. I'm actually as we're recording this, I haven't recorded the next episode of Bloopery yet, but Bloopery will actually be out before this episode. And so that's going to go up. All of our new music goes up for free for people who pay $3 a month. It's, you know, it's like the whole Dyson Dreer album, you know, you just, and I just said the thing I hate when people say, you know, where if you pay this amount, you get this free. Well, no, you're not going to get it free. I understand, but we do have a couple of tiers with a number of benefits. And if you are digging our the music, then please consider that. Even at the lowest tier, though, you do get our Bloopery show, which is going to be once a month moving forward. And so I do hope that you check that out. Just being very, very frank, we're now 2 years into this podcast. And while we don't expect to make any money off the podcast, we're still losing money on the podcast. And so, while we both love doing this and really get excited about doing that, that is, you know, that is money that we're honestly like taking from our household and family and putting into the show, just as a labor of love and as something we love. But, it would help us out a lot if we no longer had to do that. The expenses, are you blowing your nose while I'm asking for people for money?
No, that was not what happened. Okay. Yes. Sorry.
Oh,
I thought I'd lighten it up a little bit. Hey, no, I want to tell people too, like, you know, I actually am, and you can cut this out later if this doesn't fit, but I'm a Patreon for Technofunk Boy. And part of the reason I am is because even though I participate in the show and I'm one of the characters, I don't do a lot of work. I come on and I have a good time. You know, Paul here, like, actually spends a lot of time making the show and editing it and doing stuff like that. And so I'm a patron because I like what he does and I appreciate it, and it gives me an opportunity to have some enjoyment. So, and I might be enjoying it on a greater level than the listener is because I'm participating with it, but I like it enough to contribute to it. And it's not that much money. I mean, it's like, if you're struggling to, you know, put food on your table, yeah, you know, it's like, okay, fine, don't do it. We totally understand it. And it took me a while before I actually did become a patron because I was struggling financially for a while.
Yeah.
And also I figured out, well, I'm on the show, so I don't need to contribute. But then it's like, it kind of hit me one day. I was like, you know, I really enjoy this show. I look forward to it. So if you're one of the listeners that sits around and waits for the show to come out, and you're like kind of like looking forward to it, you wait for it to drop on Friday. Yeah, that's when we release, right? Friday, yeah. And you wait for it to drop, and like as soon as it drops or as soon as you see it, you know, you wake up. That's part of your Friday routine is to listen to the show. You know, that's awesome. That's super, super awesome. But becoming a patron isn't that hard. And actually, one of the reasons I hadn't, and I kind of want to do a video on this. I was thinking about doing a video on this online because I have a few other patrons that I support, Patreons that I support, but I didn't support any of them until like a few months ago, and it like kind of dawned on me, like I just wanted to start supporting people that do things that I like, It's like, what else could you spend all your money on all this stuff every week, and it's just like, well, but if you actually want to help somebody that you like or care for, that you like what they're what they're producing, it's a great way to contribute. And one of the reasons I did contribute before is because I'm a really paranoid person, and I'm like afraid of new things. I'm especially afraid of like spending money online, like or having this.
Well, what is this, like the 90s?
Yeah, I mean, I know, no, but I'm a '90s kid. It's like some of. I'm just trying to address every personality out there who might be reticent about spending their money online. But like now, it's like I have a few different patrons, and every month I get this withdrawal from my bank account, and it's like it's a small amount. It's not that much. It's like less than most all my bills, but like it's my favorite bill that I get. It's my favorite bill, if I could say this, because when I see that money come out for that, I'm like, at least that money's going to some place that needs it, versus like all these giant corporations that I'm just like shoveling over like piles and piles of cash to because I'm trying to be like live the American dream or some crap. Like it's like that's the one bill that I look at on my list of outgoing expenses on my bank account, and I'm like, I like that bill. I like that bill, and I'm not even. This is not fake at all. I mean, I'm dead serious. I like that bill. It's my favorite bill. In fact, it's so much my favorite bill that I fantasize about making that bill bigger. But then I'm like, okay, Doug, okay. You want to be like a philanthropist or whatever, but like there is a line, So like I struggle with like not putting even more money into it. But I'm just saying, is like if you're enjoying the show, you're actually not going to be giving the money to me. It's going to go to Paul, and he deserves it because he does spend a lot of time working on the show. So this was a long pitch, but I think every minute,
wow.
If we've convinced one person to give you an extra buck, it's totally worth it.
I have to edit all that out. Goodness.
Every dollar helps, man.
Yeah, and it is true because we put out the Dyson Dreary album out. It's like we don't make money off of that. The Techno Funk Boy does not have a name where like people run out and buy our music, and so that does help us a lot. But we were both in a position where we could not do that, or and that's totally cool. Totally understand that. The last thing you can do is share the show. I am on Instagram, on Facebook, and on Twitter right now, putting up like these little 1-minute memories from the first 100 episodes. Go like us on one of those platforms and share some of those, and first of all, listen to them because they're a lot of fun. Me going back through these episodes has just been a lot of fun to find these memories, and they're so funny. And so, share them and tell your friends, because we know that you hang out with people who like retro gaming too. Yeah. Please do tell a friend, about us. That helps us out a lot. We're moving into year 3 now, and we've,
that's so crazy.
At this point, we really need to be kind of, growing the show so that it is supporting itself.
Yeah. No, people need to like, hey, look, and if you can't or you don't or whatever, like Paul is saying, like if you can't put the money forward, like if you're like a kid and you live with your parents and they don't let you have a debit card because you spent a bunch of money buying skins for your P90 on CS:GO,
wow,
and you got banned from using the debit card, like we get it, you're banned from having money, like. Youngster, you still have the power of your voice. You can still give 5 stars. You can still share on social media. So like, really, it isn't just about the money. I mean, that is a very that's probably your favorite way probably for somebody to recognize you. But there's also sharing it and like just talking about it. Just even word of mouth. You go to school or you have a friend that likes it. Send them your favorite episode, because that's the other thing too. Like a lot of these episodes, I feel like I have certain friends that will like a certain episode, but they might not like all the episodes we do. That's fine. Like share the episodes that you think your friend will like. Oh, my friend really likes this game. I'm going to share him this episode. He really likes this. I'm going to share this episode. So it's like we have such a variety of different topics and stuff like that. Share the episodes that you think are cool or that you like with the friends that they relate to. Don't have to say you don't have to be so general to where you're like, oh, just start listening to this podcast. Most people oftentimes don't do that. If you tell somebody, hey, I really want you to listen to this podcast, like they're like, okay, why? And like you should tie it to something that they're interested in. Like, hey, like they talked about this game that I know you like, or they talked about this. They're really into video game music, so here's a episode where they talk about, you know, exclusively about video game music or whatever. You know, be smart about how you share our stuff. Like, man, I'm strategizing for you guys, and I'm taking all the work out of sharing our podcast. Anyway,
right? Yeah. So, that being said, Kai and Steven will return to the studio next week.
Will it be Steven? Like, he'll be like normal, you think?
People's got to tune in to find out.
I don't know. Steven he lived inside a robot for how many years? He's probably pretty messed up.
Oh gosh. So, it's been a ton of fun doing 100 of these episodes, and we are looking forward to more. And so we do hope that you'll tune in next week for some Final Fantasy IV.
Yeah.
And have me gush over this game for several weeks in a row, while Steven just talks about how he hasn't played it.
What? Starcraft.
Right.
I'll try to do some research. I'm the new Steven, remember?
Right, yes. All right, well, great. And so we will see y'all next week. Thank you.
Yeah, see you later.
The Retro Zoo Super Show is brought to you by the Techno Funk Boy. Follow us on Twitter at Techno Funk Boy, on Facebook at the Techno Funk Boy, and sign up for our email list at technofunkboy.com. Also look for us on Spotify, iTunes, and Amazon for music. If you are so inclined, please leave us a 5-star rating and review on your favorite podcast catcher. If you are not so inclined, you are obviously some sort of villain trying to conquer the world. Unowned music and gameplay clips are used for educational and critical purposes. Thank you for listening. Keep gaming. Unless you have responsibilities that need to be done at this time, then you can game later.